Well, I'm out today on the Red Revolt in what is supposed to be a heat wave. But I'll be honest, it's not that warm. But I like it when it's warm because I'm from Africa and I'm riding along on the cycle path, you know, the one that cyclists never use. So the papers today are telling us that there's going to be a heat wave, and one of the papers even had a headline, front page, saying "Blowtorch Britain." And apparently it's going to be 27 degrees. As far as I'm concerned, and I think most people, 27 degrees is just pleasantly mild, pleasantly warm even, but certainly not hot. You really need to be over 30 degrees before it's hot. And I always know when it's hot because my wife puts her thin coat on. Something else I find really interesting in Britain, on those sort of spring and autumn days where it's cool but not cold, it's just sort of reasonably pleasant, and some people will be out in shorts and a vest and others will have a coat on. And it's even more amusing when you see a couple walking together and one's in a t-shirt and the other one's wearing a coat. As I said, I just find that quite amusing. It's part of the sort of rich tapestry of British life. And another paper is telling us that it's going to be hotter than Spain. Like somehow Spain is the hottest country in the world or something. But basically it's just because a lot of people go there for their summer holidays. So their association with Spain is warm weather. And I've been to Barcelona when it's been absolutely bloody freezing. But of course the papers these days, they can't measure their readership by sales. So they measure it by clicks. And of course, that's how they sell advertising, by the number of clicks. So their whole philosophy is just to create clickbait headlines. So one of the examples of that is they quite often in the winter, and I've mentioned this before, they talk about Britain to be covered by a wall of snow. And then you read the article, and it says that according to WX charts, if this was to happen and the wind direction was to change and the temperature to do something else, then there could be snow on the high ground of Scotland. And you think, it's not really a wall of snow, is it? And even then, it says in the same article that the Met Office have said it's not going to happen. And it's the same with the heat wave. If you read the article, you'll probably find that it's only possible in a certain set of circumstances. And there's usually a disclaimer on it as well. Whenever they talk about a heat wave, it says terms and conditions apply, excludes Wales and Northern Ireland, because all of the heat waves they had last year, it was cold and damp here. And the whole concept of a heat wave is an interesting one. A heat wave is when you have a prolonged spell of hot weather, where people struggle with the heat to carry out their daily activities, where the government gives out warnings telling you to put on sun cream and drink plenty, but don't wash because we could run out of water. That's a heat wave. The last time that happened, I think, was 1976. Because whenever you talk to British people, and you say, oh, bloody weather's miserable, and they go, it's not always like this. You do have nice summers. And you say, well, when's that then? And they go, well, 1976, you should have been here then. And that was nearly 50 years ago. But in the clickbait world, every time the sun comes out, they tell us it's a heat wave. And then, if it's reasonably cool through the summer, and you have a couple of nice days, and they call it a mini heat wave. And that's really all it is. A mini heat wave just means a couple of nice sunny days. It's a bit like Gary Neville saying that when he took a weekend off, it was a mini retirement. But as I said, I'm in favour of heat waves because I'm from Africa and I like warm weather. I remember the Band-Aid song, and they said there won't be any snow in Africa this Christmas. And I thought, no shit. The bottom half of Africa, Christmas is in summer. The top half is either tropical or desert. So snow is not awfully common in Africa, in any part of Africa. It does happen every now and then. There was the big snow in 1981. In Johannesburg anyway. I was at an A-level college in Johannesburg, and I used to cycle down to the station. Some friends of my parents had a house next to the station with a garage, so I had a key to the garage. I could go and park my bike in there. And all the public swimming pools were outdoor pools, and they used to close from the 30th of April to the 1st of September. So as far as we were concerned, that was winter. And when you got to the 1st of September, it was summer. So I remember getting dressed for school on this particular morning. I put a short sleeve shirt on. And there was quite a big dark cloud in the sky, but you know, rainfall normally starts in September, so nothing too unusual about that. Just thought, oh, it'll be a thunderstorm. Anyway, it was one of those days where we had a lesson first thing in the morning and last thing in the afternoon and nothing in between. So this friend of mine said, well, he said, I can't be asked waiting for this afternoon. Let's just go home. So I said, yeah, all right, I'll come with you. And we went. So we got on the train. Lucky we did. Because while we were on the way back, it started snowing. And this friend that I was with was unable to speak. He was just looking out the train window and he just kept saying, but it's snowing. And as I said, lucky we did, because the trains that left after that were taking about 4 hours to get back. But it was so unusual that business people, bankers are out in their suits building snowmen and throwing snowballs at each other. Because most of them had never seen snow in their lives before. And they haven't since. I mean, actual snow. And every now and then you get a light dusting of snow. And I mean, you can see the grass poking through it. There's nothing on any hard surfaces. And by 10 o'clock it's all gone. But that was a proper snow. Big snow. My brother, who's older than me, he drove home from work in that snow. And he said it was quite comical. Because there'd be people driving along in a straight line, and then before you know it, they're doing a helicopter impersonation, spinning round and round. But the country came to a complete standstill. Anyway, by the time I got back to the station, it was snowing pretty hard by then. And I got the bike out. It was my training bike, which wasn't far different from my race bike. I mean, it was running on silk tubulars. And so I set off and I rode at the 8 or 9 miles that I had to go to get home. And it was cold. I still had no jumper, just my short sleeve shirt. And of course, because it was still snowing quite hard, I was getting wet as well as cold. And while I was riding along, 5 miles I'd been going, and a friend of mine called Trevor drove up a side road in his Mini, and he stopped. And I said, "Why aren't you in college today?" And he said, "It was supposed to be my driving test, but they've cancelled it because of the snow." But he was driving on his own, of course, because it was Africa. It's different there. Even though he only had a provisional license. And he said to me, "Aren't you cold?" I said, "I am absolutely bloody freezing." So he said, "You need a jacket." And I said, "No shit." So he leaned in the back of his car to see what he could find. And all he could find was a woolly hat. So he gave that to me and he said, "Put that on." So I did. And I rode home in short sleeve, in the snow, with a woolly hat on. I must have looked a sight. And that was the first time I rode a bike in the snow. And weirdly enough, even though it was snowing heavily, and I was on 19mm tubular slicks, I didn't seem to have any trouble riding in the snow. Partly, I suppose, because I was young and a racing cyclist, so I thought, well, I can do anything on a bike. And partly because I was so cold, I was just concentrating on getting home as quickly as possible. So that's the story of the first time I rode a bike in the snow. And to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't mind if I never do it again. And as usual, if you found my ramblings of any interest, like and subscribe.